I knew I was spinning and I knew I hit my head. I'm like, why am I spinning? I think I'm in a car wreck. All of a sudden, I started to see a light above me that was just this like portal opening in sense. And I knew it was Archangel Jophiel. She told me that. And she's like, come with me. And no one is judging you, not one person. You do all the judging of yourself, every bit of it. Your spirit guides are guiding you with that, but they are not judging you ever. When I'm helping somebody remember a past life, I can actually see what you're experiencing. And I can see it in my mind's eye because it's like I had watched a movie.
Of these thousands of readings, there have to be a couple of them that blew you away that you would never forget because they were just so striking.
He remembered being an architect and a designer of this church over in California and described it in fine detail. He knew the name of the city, he knew the name of the church, he knew exactly what it looked like. He looked it up on Google. There it was in the place that he said it was going to be, the name of it and everything. He had all the information. How would he know that obscure thing?
Still have questions? Well, join me live for Wake Up Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Mountain, 7 p.m. Central, and 8 p.m. Eastern. I'll answer your questions, and you might see a familiar face. Together, we're waking up the collective. Thank you for watching. My guest today is Karen Kubicko, who had two near-death experiences. But this is just going to be the icing on the cake of this discussion because Karen has uncovered over 200 of her past lives through past life regressioning, where she studied under Dr. Brian Weiss. She has regressed thousands of people, and this gives her a very unique perspective between the NDEs and what she has learned about your past lives that will help you to uncover more about why you're here and how you can create a life that you are in love with. So Karen, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Lori. I really appreciate you having me on your show. It's going to be a fun conversation with you today.
Well, we have so much to talk about. And one of the things I really loved about our pre-conversation is how many spiritual books we read in our journey that we had in common, like
True.
Old Souls and
Mhm.
Michael Newton and Brian Weiss. So everybody's in for a treat because you're going to get a ton of resources that maybe will take you down a different rabbit hole. So what I want to do though, Karen, is I'm going to start at the beginning for you, which was really your first NDE.
Okay,
So why don't you share that in any way that makes sense for you to share it?
sure. So, how to start on that? So, during the birthing process, I would say, of my second child, it wasn't working out really easily and it became emergent. They couldn't find any kind of a um, heartbeat on her. It started going way down. Her blood pressure was going way down. And, you know, I have really clear memories. I wish I knew who this nurse was. She's telling me, breathe for the baby, breathe for the baby. And then all of a sudden, I'm not in the labor room. I'm being rushed into, I guess it's called the labor room that I was in. I'm being rushed into the OR because they needed to take her out immediately because they weren't getting any kind of signals that she was still with us in a sense. And I was told that the room went from having a couple people in it to 20 during that occurrence. And so they rushed me into the OR, and I remember them draping up and doing all the extra stuff that they do to get you ready to have now an emergency section, like a super emergency section. And the doctor's standing there, he's like, can I cut? Can I cut? And I'm like, I can still feel what you're doing. And then I don't remember anything. But the next thing I do remember is being above, having full understanding that she came out blue. And I remember uh, pretty vividly how I was part of a group of people. It felt like people, but it really was spiritual beings, it's spirit guides, and it feels like there were angels as well. They felt higher up now that I'm rethinking about this memory. And I'm talking with these people. And one of my psychic friends is like, it's almost like you were telling them what to do, directing them, being the mama bear, really. Don't let this happen to her, and helping them down there. There was a ton of people in the room. I remember them intubating her because they were trying to bring her back, and going through that whole exercise. And at the same time, other doctors and nurses and whatnot were focusing on me because, she had tried to come out the really wrong way in that experience. And so it was it was really interesting because all of that happened and I was like out of it, literally out of my body, probably for a good 2 weeks after she came, because she was still in NICU, which is the neonatal intensive care unit. And I was frantic. You can't just stay there when you have gone through all that kind of stuff and they're in NICU. And why? I don't know, but because you're the parent, you know what I mean? I'm trying to nurse her and do all that kind of stuff. And so I was hyper focused on taking care of her. I already had a small child at home. It was a whole production. And um, they she finally was able to come home from the hospital a few weeks later, thankfully, and they had monitors hooked up to her. I mean, and it was a scary time, Lori, honestly, because there was a point a few days after she was in NICU where they were like, we need to check her brain waves, make sure she's really here in a sense, and not a vegetable, just surviving in a way. So it was a super scary time. And I don't feel like I was fully back in my body, honestly, until she was home from the hospital and I could like take a breath and relax and all that kind of stuff. She was still hooked up to monitors for, I want to say, a month or so after she came out and of the hospital, just to make sure her heart rate kept going all over the place. It was a production in that sense, but she's all fine. Graduate college, all the stuff, and doing good and everything. So that's a long time ago. Um, but I didn't even realize I had a near-death experience, Lori, until I was talking with someone probably 10 years after that. And he is a psychic, and I was just working with him on learning about intuition, trusting it some more, still on that path of trying to learn what all this is about. And he's like, so why do you think that you're able to see and really remember all these details of her birth? Because in reality, I was put under anesthesia to have that experience, to have her taken, removed out in that kind of way, in the C-section way. And my surgery was a solid 5 hours, what they were doing to fix what was broken because of how she came through. And it was a really long time to be under, in a sense. And how do you have all these memories of that? And I'm like, oh, I don't know. He's like, well, you think you had a near-death experience? And I'm like, maybe, I guess. Because I was really out of my body, and it took so long for me to really fully go, in a sense, back in my body.
Wow. So when you think back to that, I know you said that it's super vivid. You can go back into the
Yeah,
memories.
sure.
Did you ever have a chance to talk to anybody else who was in that OR to get confirmations about some of the things that you wouldn't have known?
Yeah, I did not. I actually the I do have the notes and stuff from when that happened. Um, I don't know if I still have them actually, because I actually was going to sue the doctor, and so I got all the medical transcribed information and stuff like that. But it's so outside of my understanding on how to read through all of that. I think I looked at it and I didn't comprehend it. But I have to be honest, Lori, I don't even know if I still have it, to be honest. And I don't know if it would have said anything in there that I would have been more than what they would have provided a patient. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
Versus
Yes, of
their own
course.
notes.
Yeah.
So I don't know that it would have listed in there. I do remember getting information when I've tuned into that before, that my heart stopped at one point. I I remember hearing that sound where it's like flatline sound. So that sound is a definite thing that I remember hearing, and whirring of noises of other machines and things that were going on, people talking. And I remember waking up and being back in my body and saying to them, why is she blue? Why is she blue? Why is she blue? And then all of a sudden I'm put back under again. You know what I mean? Because she had come out blue and I was like coming back in my body to like, I guess, freak out about it as a mom. And so it was pretty unsettling situation.
I'm sure it was.
Yeah.
So you described that it was a few days before you actually felt like you were back in your body fully.
Yeah.
Explain in any of the lacking human words we have how that felt to you.
It's almost like I felt robotic. I don't even know how to explain it. Like I felt, I don't know if I was just in shock because I mean, she almost died. I almost died, but I wasn't focusing on me. I was more about worrying about her, and I felt like I caused it to happen. I mean, I was going through all kind of emotions, really, Lori, because um, it was just not an easy experience. But I definitely felt like I was just going through the motions, and not fully present, and to the point that her dad was like talking to the doctors about it, and they had me go talk to people about what was happening and stuff like that, and to check on, I guess, my mental status in a sense, to see if I was okay. But really, I feel like it was just because I was just so unnerved by it all. I and I've met so many people doing the work that I do with gifting, the with doing readings and past life regressions and that type of thing. When you do experience something that's a little scary, you jump out of your body, and if you are in the midst of even remembering a past life, and on some level that you're going to be shot and killed or harmed in some kind of way, your energy is out of your body. It's no different than why I jumped out of my body in that experience, because it feels safer in a sense to be out and you don't have to experience all that pain, all that, what you're going through and that type of thing. Um, but it was definitely, I was out because of the shock and the worry and the concern, all of the emotion connected to that. And I feel like it must have felt safer on some subconscious level to be up in this higher dimension versus here in this earth experience. And I really didn't feel like I was back in a sense until she came home from the hospital.
Yeah. I'm so glad that you are describing this because every time I get to have this particular conversation, I feel like it's an immense help to people who are watching because when we've lost somebody, especially if it's in any type of a tragic way, a
Yeah,
car accident, something that we would perceive the person would have gone through pain on their exit point. I really love it when somebody like you shares that they left the body and didn't experience that, even if the body looked like it was still going through that at the
sure.
same time, because it brings comfort to people to know that their loved ones are not suffering. So will you talk about that just a little bit more so that
Sure.
people who are listening can understand that their loved ones really don't suffer? You touched on it.
Yeah, I mean, the reason that um I know I stepped out of my body in that experience in my past, where I was able to come out because my body was going through some serious trauma at that moment. And um whenever I was doing a past life regression with somebody, gosh, it's got to be 15 years ago, something like that. And he was remembering being on the beach of Normandy during World War II. And he's coming off the boat, he's standing there, then all of a sudden he says to me, someone just took my spirit part of me out of my body. I'm like, what do you mean? What do you mean? Tell me some more. And so he was saying, oh, it's my spirit guide. She's telling me that she helped me, my spirit part of me, come out of my physical body right before I was going to get shot. So I didn't have to experience that pain, that trauma, and have that on a energetic level in a sense. So it's like another way to describe it, I guess, would be if if you like hit your head and you hit it on a cupboard or something like that, you're fully in your body and you're aware of it, right? And you feel all that pain. But for him, his spirit guide was protecting him. They must have known on some deep level this was going to happen in some way. And he was able to, like, it was almost like he felt like he was yanked out of his physical body, so that when he received that shot, that trauma of that experience didn't get embedded into his being in a real sense. And I've encountered so many other people that has happened with. And even when you think about it, Lori, um, when when you're passed out, when you're in an unconscious state, or you are in a coma, when I have psychically seen the situation in the room or the place that occurred or whatever, I'm always seeing the person laying there, their physical body, but the spirit part of them is standing right next to their body, checking it out. When a family member was in a coma for a little while, several years ago, when I tuned into him, he was sitting at the bottom of the bed with his hand on his leg, just like looking at what's going on and hanging out and just watching over his body. That he was just hanging out with himself in a sense, but not experiencing any of the stuff that he was going through. So when I started seeing this consistently through doing readings and working with people in past lives, their energy part of them, the spirit part of them, comes out of their physical body, and they don't have to experience that pain on purpose.
So helpful. Thank you so
Yeah,
much for sharing that. Okay. So after you have this first near-death experience and you realize that you've had a hard time coming back into your body,
yeah,
how did your life change? Did you have different abilities that kind of came online or increased? Because I know you had some experiences as a child. So you came in a
sure,
little bit open. And I think that there's always a little piece of that with some of
sure.
these experiences. But how was it different after that?
So what changed, and back to, I didn't realize I had a near-death experience, mind you. I just thought that was normal, and I didn't think about it. I was more focused on the kids. I got two little kids running around in diapers and all this stuff, you know. But 3 months after she came into my life, I'm grateful. I nursed my babies for as long as I humanly could. And I woke up right after I had laid her down to sleep, and I looked over, and a person was standing there, a man holding her, real gentle, real sweet, looking down at her. I could feel how much they cared about her and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, did she wake up? Thinking that her dad might have woken up with her. And I looked over, he's still sleeping. I looked back and it was all gone. I was like, who was holding my baby? I was like, Mama Bear came out again, And I looked back at where I had laid her down. I had a little crib thing next to the bed, and she was laying in the same place I had laid her, with a blanket on, the same way I had left her. And so I reached out to a psychic for the first time ever, because I didn't know what that was about. And he helped me understand it was a relative. And I came to find out it was actually my grandfather, who had passed a few years prior. So that was super loving and cool to know. And but then I started seeing two other ghosts in my house. One I actually saw, and he was a little kid, probably around the age of 6. And this is probably 4 years later. And I started becoming aware of him. I kind of felt like someone else was around when I was reading books and things like that to my kids when they were little. When you're having fun with Dr. Seuss and all the different kind of kid books that are fun to read. I always felt like there was like another one there, and I could never explain it. And then one day, well, it was one night actually, I woke up and someone's touching my foot at the bottom of the bed. And my older child was around the same age at that time. And I'm like, honey, did you wake up? Do you need something? And then poof, disappeared. But I can tell you what, they were not my son, because they were dressed in suspenders, kind of like a like a farmer suspender kind of thing, with a kind of misshapen white shirt on underneath, and his hair was kind of a mess. And it was like, after I thought about it, I'm like, oh, think that's my son. And so, and then they came back again. They're touching me on the shoulder and trying to wake me up in the middle of the night. And I was like, I don't know what's going on here. And at the same time, I was hearing, it sounded like to me, and I never saw this person, I only heard them. I heard them creeping up the steps. It sounded like someone who was having a very difficult time walking, just creeping up the steps. You can hear the steps creaking, like someone was stepping on them. And every once in a while I'd hear it. And then other people who weren't even like open, I'm going to air quote that, open, heard them also walking up the steps. And like, my mother-in-law was there one day and she's like, I thought one of the kids were walking up the steps and they were like littler. And she went over to check and there was nobody there. And it freaked her out a little bit. They were still playing on the floor. She's like, who was walking up the steps? And nobody was there. And I'm like, oh, she heard the dude, you know? And so, and after a while, and after that, the little kid started touching me. I was like, I think I need help with this because I don't know what to do with that. And then I reached out to a different person I had met in the meantime. She was a psychic. She came over and we helped them go in the light so they could move on. And so that was a special experience in and of itself. And so that's whenever, right around, I mean, I guess I was getting into all this stuff and I kind of missed a portion of what I went through before that, but that opened me up to all these things. But I definitely was being exposed to more otherworldly beings in my awareness.
Okay, so you had these experiences in the first near-death experience.
Mm-hmm.
So I know in the timeline of this, you go through a lot of detail with the past life regression and how you got involved in that. And you also had the second NDE. Which one would you like to tell first?
Well, I'll bring how I got into past life regression work first because that brought me to here at this moment talking to you, Lori. You know,
Okay.
really, truly.
Yeah,
So,
sure.
um, so when I went to see that psychic and to talk about who that ghost was, I was standing in my bedroom and holding my child, and he said it was a family member. And I was like, okay, cool. And then he said to me, you have you have a daughter? And I said yes. And he's like, she has a really strong third eye. You really need to help her with that. And so I was like, okay, I don't know what a third eye is. And so she's 3 months old. I had no idea. And I started delving into all this stuff that's psychic, anything, and read a lot of stuff, found some books, found a little bit of stuff online, which by the way, back then online stuff was not as much as it is now. And so I was going to the library trying to find all this different things and talking to people, anyone that had any kind of knowledge on this. And then I found a book that was on children's past lives. And I'm like, kid stuff, weird stuff. Let's read it, you know? And I still have that book. It still smells like the patchouli and other essential oils and things like that that were floating around in this shop that I found it at. And what a interesting experience all of that was. Everything happens for a reason, right, Lori? And so,
Million percent.
oh man. But Carol Bowman wrote that book, and she talked about in her prologue about how she got into past life and past life regression work and understanding all that type of thing. She was having a breathing issue, and she remembered in the throes of a fever one time a few different past life memories, and she started getting better. And then she started working with somebody who did past life regression, and she never had an issue again. And I was like, wow, if she can do it, I can do it. Because at that time I had asthma, and it was really a very interesting, so much more information, Lori, that we don't have time to go into, that brought me to then learn about Brian Weiss and all of his work, study under him. And then I started helping other people remember their past lives and started learning more about how I can use my psychic abilities. Working through some of my past lifetimes, I went to the in-between life that's described in some of the other books that you and I had read early on, and got to visit with angels. Oh man, that's so cool. And spirit guides, and really connect with all kinds of so much information that is incredible and awe-inspiring. And
What was it about Dr. Brian Weiss and what you read that made you feel like, wait a minute, there's really something here. And I think I want to be able to learn how to do this.
I, I, I don't know what the exact clincher was in a sense on what changed my mind and how I decided. It almost feels like at that point in time, when I was looking at his books and reading his books, he was the only one that had so much information out there, truly. And some of the other people that I found books that spoke about past life regression, they were I can't remember their names. I can see their names on some of the books that I have. They're old books and they're not teaching or online or accessible or even I think still alive at this point. And so Brian was, and he was teaching a class in New York, and I was like, that's not too far. And so I decided to go there and learn more. I read everything he had, and I studied everything I could on hypnosis, and I read this huge volume of work that was meant for a psychologist. And I apologize, I don't know the name of it offhand, but it was a two encyclopedia like volume set of how to help people remember past lives. And so I read through all of that, went to take his class in 2007, and it's so fascinating, Lori. It's, you never know what someone's going to remember or connect or help them or uncover in some kind of way. It's just so interesting.
Well, I'm glad you said that because it's actually one of the questions I wanted to ask
Oh,
you,
good.
which is of these thousands of readings, there have to be a couple of them that blew you away that you would never forget because they were just so striking. Can you share a couple of those with us so people
Oh,
get the flavor of what past life regression is, how it works, and what it does to help somebody once they uncover some of these memories?
wow. Um, there's so many. So I guess I'll go back to where it really made an impact on me from when I first started. Okay. Um, I had a woman come to me. She was worrying about something was going to happen to her daughter endlessly. She had two kids. She didn't worry too much about her son for some reason. She's like, but my daughter, oh my gosh, she walks out of the house and I'm frantic. I'm having an anxiety attack, basically. And I'm worrying endlessly about her all the time, all the time, all the time. And so I took her into a past life regression, and she was able to remember where she was out with her daughter in that past lifetime. She was a very good friend of hers. Okay. And she was out swimming in the sea with her, and someone came by on a boat and grabbed her and took her, and she never saw her again. And she wasn't able to get to her. She's swimming, you know what I mean? And so it was very it made so much sense to her. When she came out of that regression, she was like, "Oh, that is exactly why I'm worried somebody's going to take her. Someone's going to harm her in some kind of way, and there's nothing I can do about it." And so she has felt so much better because of that memory. That really stands out in my mind because that instantly helped her. Okay. Um, I have another one that's coming to mind. I had this, another, I have a lot of women that come to me. So I have another woman that came to me. And so she was having a relationship with this guy. She was like, man, this is so weird. We're on and off, on and off. There's like, I don't know what's going on. He doesn't want to have kids. He's very adamant about it. But then he's like, it's like hot and cold. He wants to be involved and he doesn't want to be involved. We feel like we've known each other forever. I want to understand what's going on. And she goes back to a life where they were married. And it feels like, if I remember correctly, because when I'm helping somebody remember a past life, Lori, because now I've tuned into my psychic abilities, I can actually see what you're experiencing, and I can see it in my mind's eye. And it's like I'm standing there seeing what's going on. So I can describe to you these things much easier than remembering what they said to me. Because it's like I had watched a movie and I'm telling you about it in a sense. But she remembered being in this home, and it feels like it's the 1700s, and they was just a quaint home. It wasn't anything fancy or anything like that. And she was making breakfast or something like that, cooking a meal. And her husband was out in the back working. And the house caught on fire. Both of the people in the house, the mom and the dad, both thought the other person was watching the child who was asleep upstairs. And she didn't, she was in the middle of cooking. She didn't know he laid him down for a nap or whatever. And both of them went out separate doors, one out the front, one out the back. And then the house is burning because of how the fire went bad, went wrong whenever she was in the middle of cooking. The fireplace was still inside the house. It wasn't a regular stovetop like we have today. It was a hearth. And when they met up with each other outside the house is burning down, and neither one of them have this newborn baby in their hands. They couldn't work up through it because there was no saving that child. It was the house was engulfed in flames, and they couldn't go back in. It was a very emotional memory because, and you know, it's no different than when you lose someone here in this earth experience that you're having right now as this human. It is more difficult for someone to remember when they've lost somebody in a past lifetime than it is to see your own past life death, 100% of the time. And so this couple, they never were able to work it through. He blamed her for the loss of their child. She was trying to, recover both of them emotionally with that grief. And then again, interestingly, they came back together again in this current lifetime. And isn't it weird that he brought up, some of this stuff? I don't want to ever have kids, blah, blah, blah. Well, he's still working on the grief from that past lifetime, right? So it really made a whole lot of sense to her. And hopefully it helped them both on some way, because sometimes, and just because I do past life regression all the time, too, I have to mention this. When you remember a past life where there was a trauma, no different than the one where the woman remember her daughter being taken, and the other one where the woman, their child perished in the fire. The other person that they know again in this current lifetime receives a healing in some sense, or an understanding on some deep emotional or energetic level, because they've brought that forward into this awareness in this current life.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
That, oh,
fascinating.
it is fascinating. And I know another thing that you can help heal in a past life regression is either some type of phobia that's connected to a past life, or some type of an injury or almost like a phantom pain that
Yeah.
exists. So can you give us an example of each one of those things that you've done?
Phantom pain. Well, I know that I can talk to you about one of mine
Okay, sure.
because, okay, so I was a man back in, gosh, BC times. My name was Kyung Hun. Okay. And I'm over in Asia. We're fighting a battle. Not my vibe. Okay. I had not remembered this past lifetime yet, mind you. And for like about a month, and I can feel it right now that we're talking about it, which is weird. Um, I can, man, I haven't thought about this past lifetime for a while. It's in my book. Life is just another class, available on Amazon. Plug in that, Lori. But I had this weird feeling right in the middle of my back, like it was like it wouldn't go away. It was like a weird uncomfortableness, and I didn't understand why I was having that. And every time I would just like sit someplace, here now on a couch somewhere, whatever, I'd feel that weird pain. I'd be like, why is that happening? It was weird. And then I remembered this lifetime, and he had a wife, he had a small son, and he was called to go to war in that time. And it was not a choice. It felt like every man in that time period was, you had to, there wasn't a choice. It didn't matter what you were doing or whatever was going on in your life, no choice in the matter. You were part of the war situation. He got to be part of a group of scouts that scouted ahead to see where the enemy was, and so it was him and three other men, and we're riding on horses. I can remember the horse, and we go over to this edge. It was like a cliff, and look down over the hillside, and you could see where they had camped out down below. And so we were trying to be really quiet. One of the guys sneezed, and blew our cover in a sense because we were trying to be real quiet about it. Okay. And when that happened, they were on alert. They found us, and I was run through with a sword right through that same space on my back. And I don't want to be gruesome on here, Lori, but I mean, I was like cut wide open. It was not a good time. And I fell, and my horse fell over this side of this cliff. And it was just, I remember stepping out of my body. I remember floating down there with the horse and all the stuff, and seeing the horse be in spirit too. I mean, it was just interesting. But then that pain went away. So it was
Well, and
like
I think
that,
that's the gist of it, isn't it? Like when
right,
people uncover these things, whatever is hurting them or the phantom
right.
pain they have usually dissipates after this.
Right, it does. I mean, because I have had a lot of people come to me with like, I had someone that just sent me an email because I don't always get feedback on how they're feeling afterwards. Because sometimes people come and I don't hear from them again for years. And that's okay. You come, you get what you need, and whenever you're ready, I'm here for you. And so he had some stomach pain, couldn't be explained, did all kinds of scans and all kinds of things. We went to a past lifetime, and I'd have to actually go look at his notes to figure out and remember exactly what happened to him. But something was going on with his stomach that he remembered in a past lifetime, very much became connected to that experience. And when I take someone into a past life memory and there's any kind of trauma, the number one thing that I do is you must forgive every little aspect of whatever it is that came up. So we were forgiven his stomach, whatever happened. I feel like a germ was involved or something like that. And like for me, whenever that knife or the sword hit into me across my back, I was forgiving the metal, forgiving the person, forgiving myself, forgiving the war, forgiving the people, forgiving the different warring nations, whatever was going on at the time, to release any aspect of anything that was happening at that time. And so no different for him. And he wrote me an email back. Oh my gosh, I have to let you know that my stomach no longer hurts. It's been hurting for over a year and no one can figure it out. And all of a sudden now it's gone. I'm like, isn't it magical? Because it's energy, stock energy stored from trauma. No matter if it's been from this current lifetime or a past lifetime, sometimes it's reignited in a sense because of something else going on around you. Like on some level, I must have known I was going to remember that past lifetime. I didn't know that was going to happen. This was a month or so before I actually remembered that lifetime as Kunhun. And so when it happened, I was like, oh, this makes complete sense now. Why I was feeling that weird pain on my back and stuff like that. And then why it magically went away, you know? I didn't go through all kinds of tests like this gentleman had done for his experience, but I mean, it just goes to show we're so much more than just this human, right? We're
Yes,
so much more.
so much more. So one of the things that really swayed me that reincarnation was real was when I read my first book on it called Old Souls.
Mm.
And it featured Dr. Ian Stevens, who
Mm-hmm.
followed mostly children who remembered past lives for like
True.
30 years. And Tom Schroeder wrote the book. He was a journalist, Pulitzer Prize winning journalist who was kind of skeptic about the whole idea, befriended Ian and got him to allow Tom to travel with him to
Ah, yeah.
India,
Yeah, I
right?
remember now. It's been like 20 years since or more since I've read that book.
Oh, but
But
what a great book. And
yeah.
the reason that I believed reincarnation was real and the reason that I feel it's indisputable now is because there's so much evidential evidence within
True.
it. And so I'll give a quick example and then I would love for you if you can think of an example to share like
Sure
this.
can.
So in Ian's book, there was a child who was young enough that they had never traveled out of the town that they lived in,
Hmm.
but remembered a past life, remembered first and last name, kind of car they drove, how they died, other people's names, names of children in their lives. And when they took the child to that town that they had never been to, the child made a beeline through town and went to its house that it lived
Wow.
in, confirmed that this was the person who lived here, this is how they died, and was able to evidentially see that all the things that the child could not have possibly have known
Right.
were
How?
true. And so
Right.
I'm sure that you've had a few of these that have happened over the years where people have come back to you and they've been able to get evidential evidence. Can you share any of those with us?
Oh, wow. So, I know I have some of my own. I have had a couple lifetimes where I've been found online. I'm not anybody famous like some people, but I definitely, like I found my one friend who helped me edit my first book. She was like, I'm looking her up. So she looked up a woman that I had been in New York. In 1927, I was killed by a stray bullet trying to go to a speakeasy. And um, she actually found me on ancestry.com. So that was really kind of cool. And almost all the information that I got is coming through, kind of lined up with when I was born. And then all of a sudden I wasn't on the census anymore, right around the time whenever I had passed. And so I mean, it was really interesting. What I haven't done that my spirit guides told me for that particular lifetime is that my parents didn't know what happened to me, and that there is a missing persons um, paperwork that has been filed for me. And I reached out to someone in New York to see how I could figure that out. And mind you, this is New York City. And so I was like, oh my gosh, that feels like a very difficult thing to find. But apparently there's a way to access that old information and to retrieve it. It takes time. And I just haven't written the letter and all the stuff to do that. But it's my spirit guide said that it's there, it's available. They've done that. They never knew what happened to me, and I feel really bad about that. But you know, that was really interesting. I had someone come to me another time trying to, talking about, proving what I've got a lot of fun stories actually now that they're coming to mind of other people's stuff. Um, he remembered being an architect and a designer of this church over in California and described it in fine detail. He was looking at his plans, talking about his drawings, talking with other people about it, and really, really excited about the project. In this current lifetime, he did something that was not architect, but like more engineering vibe, but interesting. First of all, same kind of vibe where he was doing that same kind of work in a sense in this past time. He knew the name of the city, he knew the name of the church, he knew exactly what it looked like. He looked it up on Google. There it was in the place that he said it was going to be, the name of it and everything. He had all the information. How would he know that obscure thing? Living here in Pennsylvania, of something that was over in California that he had never been to or known anything about. Um, I had someone else. This is a fascinating one, actually. I had someone else. They remembered being the cousin of, yeah, it's Marie Antoinette. She was a cousin of Marie Antoinette, and she was describing going to one of her balls and all that kind of stuff. And I'm typing into the Google while I'm regressing her, you know, her name that she heard, and is there a cousin? All of it came up. I was like, shut up. That's so cool, because like she's talking about it and I'm seeing it on Google, what she's talking about. Like, how would she know that information? You know what I mean? Of course, if you were a history buff, maybe, but she had no knowledge of that in this day and age. Like she didn't care about that kind of stuff. Another really cool thing that came through, and I think this one is fascinating. Somebody was remembering having a lifetime in Egypt, and they were creating. They had the papyrus scrolls, and they were writing stuff down, and they wound them up and put a very special blue wax seal on it. And I was like, well, I never knew that they did wax seals on schools back then that day. You know what I mean? And for her to be very specific about it and she mentioned that there were different colors, but this one needed a blue one. And I was like, well, that's weird. And so here's me. I'm regressing her. We look it up afterwards. And sure enough, back in Egyptian times, if you look it up online, there's different colored seals that were dependent on what they kind of meant were given to different kinds of schools, especially if they were very important documents and things. And I was like, who knew? You know what I mean? Like, where does that information come from? And thankfully, people have put so much information on online that you can search it and find that information. And so, it's just fascinating, Lori. I hope that answers your question in some way.
I loved all those examples that you shared. And I especially loved that these people aren't coming up as being somebody famous,
Right,
somebody infamous. Most people are not going to have any notoriety in a past life, but it's going to be important to them. Like the
right,
guy who was the architect of the church and
right.
uncovering that, like, indisputable.
Sure.
How do you brush that off as coincidence? You
Yeah, you
can't.
can't.
You
You
can't.
can't.
So I'm curious, and this may not be a question for you. This might be a question for your guides.
Sure.
But of the people who are living on Earth, there are 8 billion people. You
Mhm.
know that you've uncovered at least 200
Sure.
of your past lives. I know Dr. Brian Weiss, when he uncovered past lives with his patient, Catherine, she too had hundreds over many years that he
Right.
regressed her. How many average lifetimes do you think most of the souls walking around on Earth have had over the
Ooh.
millennia?
Well, so when that question has been asked to me, and I asked their guides, and specifically, I would talk to their council member spirit guide because those are the guides that help you pick out a lifetime. They always say infinite. I'm like, come on, man. They're asking me this question. Nope, infinite. I mean, you have infinite lifetimes because, we're experiencing all of what Earth and beyond has to offer. I mean, I have had people remember lifetimes in the angelic realm. I've had people go back instead of to a past life being a farmer or whatever, you know what I mean? They're, I don't know, I'm surrounded by angels. They're teaching me things. I'm in a classroom here. They're teaching me about how to do healing work. And maybe they do Reiki or something like that. Or most of the time they're nurses. And I mentioned that in another interview, and the just the vast number of people who are therapists and nurses that come for a past life regression just seems um, out of the ordinary, I guess, comparatively, if you were doing some kind of like random selection of people to come. But interestingly, they were able to describe and find detail this experience. I had I had a veteran, I'll never forget this one, Lori. I had a veterinarian come to me, and was she was like, I didn't know I was going to be a veterinarian. I decided one day I was going to do that, and it was super easy. I got straight in, I went right through. All the stuff was easy for me to go through. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. Thank you for sharing all that information. And she said she went into a past life memory where she was in the heaven space, and her job was to manage and take care of all the different kinds of animals. And it was incredible. It was incredible, Lori. I mean, I got the privilege to be able to see what she was experiencing because of my ability to see what they're doing during a past life memory. But she's standing there working with different animals, cats, dogs, horses, farm animals, all kinds of stuff. And it was like levels. I don't even know how to explain. It was like levels of animals, of spiritual animals. And she's like, okay, it's time for you to have a lifetime. Very kind and loving, and welcoming them, and then would nurture them. Here's the family that you're going to go to, and a little bit about them, like prepping them in a sense. And interestingly, she is able to telepathically communicate to animals. What a great vet, but here's why she had this past experience in a sense that she's able to communicate and work with and nurture animals. And she chose to come here on this earth plane to really do that same thing in this earth world. I was like, wow, that's fantastic. I mean, you can't make that stuff up.
That
I
is
mean,
fantastic. What about other planes of existence? So we know there's been a lot of talk in the last few years in the mainstream
mhm.
about ETs, extraterrestrials, non Earth beings that exist in other places, in other
Sure,
types of realities. It could be 2D, it could be 5D, it's in different dimensions. Have you had
sure.
anybody that you've regressed that has something that stands out that was not an earthly experience or an angel realm
So,
experience?
so I call them star beings because that feels better.
Yes.
And they tend to like that. And that's a whole long story on why I'm saying that. But um, it's funny that you asked that because this is another past life regression that really sticks out in my mind. And I still know this woman today, which is fantastic. She's one of the first people that I regressed professionally. And she had, and it's always because of a fear, right? Sometimes where what you're trying to uncover and understand. But she had a worry about her family, no different than that woman about her friend, her daughter, who was her friend in a past life. But this woman, she was very worried something was going to happen to her family. Something was going to happen to her family. She's very concerned about it. And so I'm thinking, okay, whatever's going to come, it's going to come to whatever. She goes into a past life memory, and she is a woman standing at this big window. She has a young child and a husband. And she looked down at her skin. She's talking to me about her skin. She's like, I'm not a human. My skin is like a gray purple color. It's all smooth. It's so smooth. She kept going on and on about her smooth skin. So smooth. It's so smooth. It's so smooth. And she looked over and she saw her young child. She saw her husband. And the way that she was describing her husband, it was almost like he was in the next room or behind this like pillar that was in this space that was their home. And then the next thing that she knew, there was this big, huge, bright white flash of light that came and like killed them all. And so it was like a bombing of some kind on their planet. And she wasn't human. She was definitely seeing and feeling everything about it, but it was almost like, okay, but that solved her issue. That was the root cause of why she was worried something was going to happen to her family. It had nothing to do with, well, I'm going to go visit this otherworldly place that I've been before. It was more about really connecting with that was my family that I was worried about, and that fear was coming through again in this current lifetime.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, I've had a lot of other ones too, but that one will always stick out in my mind. And
I bet.
she and I have talked about it since. And so it's and now she's a psychic in of herself and does herbs and things and super connected.
Super connected. You just brushed on this concept, and I would really love for you to elaborate on it. You mentioned that in a lifetime, a between lifetimes, there was a council member that we would go to who we would get guidance on for
Mm-hmm.
planning lifetimes. Tell
True.
us what you understand about this.
So it's came to after I was doing research on my own life just to see what the heck, because I grew up Catholic. We're just going to throw that out there. I didn't grow up believing that we had past lives. I just
No,
didn't. You know
why would
why?
you?
Why would I? And so we had this one life we had to work really hard at. And so, which is true, you still should work hard at what you're focusing on. That's why you're here, and do the best that you can do. But um I wanted to see what the fuss was about. Okay. And, in doing that, I heard, well, you should write a book about this because I was actually personally, after reading all Brian's stuff and everybody else's work, I'm looking for the book that talks about, well, what about one soul? What happens from lifetime to lifetime? What's the fuss about? Why are we doing this? Are we just randomly thrown into these lifetimes? What is happening? Right. And so we go, by we, I mean my girlfriend. I convinced her to regress me because it was easier that way to have a trusted friend in your back pocket to help you with this. And she was able to take me into several past lifetime experiences. And at a certain point, and trying to document all this information I was getting and trying to understand what was going on, and I'm trying to get more information to help write this book. I was working with a literary agent. She's like, it goes kind of harsh at the end of each of these chapters because I'm dying, right? And she's like, can you lighten it up? And so I said to my friend, well, do you think we could lighten it up at the end? Maybe I could go in the light. I've seen the light, but let's go in the light. Okay. And so she helped me and guided me in through the light. It's almost like we did this over many, many months, by the way. This just didn't happen in one session. We'd go into a past life again, see what else would come up, go to the death scene, see the light, and then see what happened next. Okay. And every time it kind of happened the same way. We'd go into the green room, we'd meet our spirit guides, we'd talk to the angels, we'd see Passover people from that past lifetime, and then we go in the heaven space. And a few times I was gifted the opportunity to go into the heaven space area. After you go in through the green room, you get the angelic healing and go in through. And you go down this long hallway at the light at the end, all the fun stuff that I'm just brushing over here, because then you go into the space between, and that's where you really start to look at your Akashic record, your soul record, to help you understand, why did you choose that lifetime? And no one is judging you, not one person. You do all the judging of yourself, every bit of it. Your spirit guides are guiding you with that, but they are not judging you ever. And then when you think you want to have another lifetime, because maybe there's something that you uncovered by reviewing your Akashic record, or you contemplated, you're talking to your spirit guides about, I really didn't learn that lesson really great, or I really want to understand this a little bit better. I want to express my voice a whole lot more. I really want to stand my ground, set some boundaries. What can I do to learn that? And so then you go to a place called the Education and Studies Building, and it's a beautiful space. There's a lot of geometry to it, which is surprising to me, but then not surprising. There's a lot of math that has to do with all of this experience that we're in. That's why there's sacred geometry and all that kind of stuff. So I walk in this building and I'm waiting in a waiting room, and then I'm consciously judging that, like, why am I waiting? Because like, there's no time here. So it was kind of an odd thing, but it was almost like they prepared the room for me in a sense. And this room, again, the geometry, 6 sides, and the walls kind of lit up with a slideshow movie of like little snippets of these different lifetimes. And your council member spirit guide would work with you, whether there was one of them or a few of them helping you. And they're like, what do you think about that life? Do you think that you could learn something here? Or how about this one? Same lesson, but different experience and stuff like that. What do you think about that one? So we'd look at them and we discuss them and, talk about them. And they're like, you sure you want to have another lifetime? Are you sure? Like, it's my free will still to choose to go into another lifetime. Because I've met a lot of people who are like, I'm done with this. I don't want to do it again. Okay, it's your choice. You don't have to. But I'm telling you right now, when you get on the other side, you're like, yeah, that wasn't so bad. Let me try it again. you know, and you come
Like
back
having a
to,
baby.
I know, right?
Yes.
And so then anyway, these council member spirit guides are so kind. They're so wise and so patient, and they're helping you choose what it is that you want to be involved in, how you want to experience learning that particular lesson, and then you come down into this life. And then interestingly, Lori, I just have to point this out. Sometimes when you have deja vu for no apparent reason in your current life, that means you're on your path. That means that you're remembering that little snippet of that movie, part of that slideshow that you saw on the other side before you came here in this earth experience.
Wow.
Right?
I love everything you shared about that. That's so helpful. All
It's
right.
it's
Go ahead.
it's wonderful. It's
It is
wonderful.
wonderful. Okay. I know people have been waiting for the second
Oh
NDE.
gosh.
So why don't you share that one in any way that you'd like to share it?
Okay. So I was at a point in my life where I had gotten a little bit off track in a sense. We're just going to throw that out there, because I had been really focused on past life regression, working on my book, talking to other people about past life regression, trying to, I guess, in a sense, help people feel comfortable having that experience. And I was just going to go get my hair cut. And all of a sudden, I'm pulling into the parking lot, literally not many feet off the road. And then all of a sudden, I knew I was spinning, and I knew I hit my head. And then the next thing I know, I'm like, why am I spinning? Oh, shoot, I think I'm in a car wreck. I think I got hit. And I was acutely aware that there were two other cars involved, and aware that there was another woman in another car with a child in a car seat, and the kid is crying because everybody's slamming the brakes on. I can hear all the stuff happening and the sound and everything that's going on. And she's yelling at her kid, "Shh, be quiet. You're going to be okay. It's going to be okay." Because she's freaking out. She's going to be involved in it as well. Like, and I actually haven't really ever shared that aspect, Lori. That's funny that I'm telling you that, because I was hyper aware of everything going on at that moment. It was bizarre. And then all of a sudden, I started to see a light above me that was just this like portal opening in sense. And I knew it was Archangel Jophiel. She told me that. And she's like, "Come with me." And she was just going, "Come with me," like motioning me to come. And I took her hand, and then all of a sudden I was in this alternative place and talking with her. I remember talking with her about choosing to come back. And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'm coming back. My kids are still young. I'm not leaving them." I'm such a mama bear when they were little kids. And they were, I think, they would have been in middle school around this time. Middle school, high school. And so it's like, there's no way I'm leaving them at this point. We had just gone through some massive changes, and in my life, separation, divorce, all that kind of stuff. And so there's a whole lot of stuff going on at that moment. And they were so important to me. I was like, "Yeah, no, I'm coming back for sure." And so then she starts talking to me about a lot of stuff that I still don't consciously remember. And I remember being in some kind of like classroom situation in a real sense. Like it looked like an actual classroom with desks and someone talking and teaching again, some other knowledge and understanding to me. And then she was walking with me. All of a sudden, it just feels like we just poofed and we were there. We're walking on this grassy land of a hillside. There's trees in the background. I'm looking down at the grass. We're walking around, and she's talking to me. "This is the place you're going to build something here someday." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." And this is cool. She's showing me some point in my future I haven't found yet, but is still being shown that it's going to happen at some point. I don't know when. And she's talking on and on about all of that, this future point. "Are you sure you want to come back?" And I'm like, "Yes." And then the next thing I know, I wake up, my foot still pressed on the brake, and the turn signal's on, and my car is the complete opposite direction. And I've ruined the shrubs of my friend's hair salon. And I'm sitting there, and sirens are coming, and firemen and all that kind of stuff is all that's happening. And I remember my friend sitting inside there. I was in such shock after that occurred. I was like still in that mom mode. I had algebra books in the back seat that I needed to take to my son for some extra tutoring that he was going to be getting later that day. And I'm like, "How am I going to get that there?" And my friend's telling them, "She's not right. You need to take her to the hospital." Because I'm like, "I'm fine. I'm fine." And they're like, "No, you're not." And they, yeah, I was not okay. I had a really bad concussion after that experience. And I was, again, interestingly, it feels like I was out of my body, but honestly, Lori, it actually feels like I was expanded into other dimensions more than out of my body at that moment. Expanded into is a better way of saying that, because I started getting so much information. I started seeing all the stuff I see on the other side with just like that. And it was incredible. And I had people coming to me that I never had met before asking me for readings. "Do I do readings?" And I'm like, I hadn't even offered I never had actually charged anybody for a reading at this point in my life, until that moment. I created a painting that shows what the other side looks like. I should have brought that and had that behind us here today. But I mean, it was all that came so much. I was channeling so much at that point because it was just super easy to do that. And it's just so much. There's just so much that went on after that experience. I'm a completely different person because of that. But I also know I put that in my lifeline, in my timeline of life, so that I would get back on my path, because I went back into doing all of this and working on everything I'm doing now. It's what I'm here
Wow.
for. Yeah.
That's incredible. I
She's
know that
nice.
archangels have different roles that they play for the human
They
race. Will you
do.
explain what the role is?
So Archangel Jophiel, she kind of has a more of a pink color to her, vibrancy of color. She actually was, she's actually telling me right this second, actually, because we're talking about her. She's the same angel that I visited and talked to whenever I was like 6 or 7 years old. I have a very, very vivid memory of being completely immersed in, I don't even know how to explain it, Lori. There were sounds and colors and everything swirling around me, and I'm just in my bedroom hanging out as a young child. But she often comes, I can't say all the time, but often comes through and talks to me about when I'm giving a reading to somebody. It's about people being able to focus on finding their joy, focusing on the joy of writing with a red pen, the joy of having a crystal, the joy of every little aspect of what you're doing in your life, the joy of the pretty jewelry that you have around your neck at this moment. You know what I mean? Just like, wow, it's really beautiful, and enjoying that moment, enjoying our time that we're having right now, having this discussion, just being completely immersed in the joy of whatever it is around you. And it's super easy to remember that Jophiel and joy kind of go together with that. But what's interesting to me is that she kind of shows up, not all the time, but a lot of the times she'll be the one that shows up first when I'm doing a reading for somebody, because that person also had a near-death experience or an out-of-body experience that helped them wake up. And it's like she's there to help comfort you and guide you in that. I can't say that she's there 100% of the time when somebody has that experience, but it has shown up more than once for me to make it not a coincidence anymore,
Mm.
for that reason. And so it's just she's very calm and very loving, as they all are.
Excellent.
Yeah,
So you mentioned that when you were in the near-death experience right before you came back into your body, that you were exposed to this knowledge and there was a recognition with it. I know a lot of times when people have NDEs, they don't get to bring back everything, and that's by
sure.
design. But is there anything you can share about that knowledge that would be helpful for us to know that you remembered?
Oh, so if and this happens a lot more than people think. So when you are out of your body, whether you have gone in a near-death experience way, I'm just going to talk about this very topically first. Um, you become very aware that you're a spiritual being having this human existence. Okay. And in that recognition, in that space, you can receive higher dimensional knowledge and understanding. It's like you're connecting to your higher self, your subconscious, your whole soul aspect of you. And that knowledge, it's almost like you're hyper aware of everything going on in and around an experience. So like I know you asked about the car wreck, and the moments that I'm talking about, it's almost like in the experience of whenever I stepped out of my body, I was very aware of my car being hit, the sounds and things, the other vehicles that were involved, the traffic that was backed up because of it, and all of the things going on, where in reality, I was passed out in my car sitting there. You know what I mean? But in this higher state, you're out of your body state. It's almost like the knowledge and understanding on a soul level, a spiritual level, is amplified. And so this is common, even when I'm helping people remember a past life. You step out of that body during that death scene part of it, and you are fully aware of so much more information. And this has helped people, really, because now that you're stepped out of your body, you're viewing it from above, you understand that in that past life, for example, you might have felt abandoned by your parent that never came back. And in this higher dimensional aspect, you become aware that parent never came back because they were traveling. Now, this is a long time ago before phones and all the stuff. They passed away. No one told you. They didn't know who they were in order to tell you to go find whoever they needed to tell. You know what I mean? So there was no way that you could have found out, but your whole life you spent in that past lifetime thinking that person abandoned you, where in fact they had not. In fact, they had not. And so in this higher expanded dimensional aspect and understanding, you get this information, and that is what brings you the peace.
Beautiful. Well, I would imagine, Karen, that right now there are a lot of people watching who are like, how can I connect with you? I'm guessing you still do these past life regressions,
I
but
do.
they don't have to be in person anymore, do they?
No, they don't. I have actually worked with people in a lot of countries outside of the United States. And, the side benefit of COVID, everybody got comfortable using Zoom. And so here we are, you and I talking on Zoom. People from all over the world have communicated with me and worked with me through Zoom. I mean, you can just go right on my website, KarenKubicko.com. It's spelled Kubicko. And you can just go right on there and schedule an appointment. I do readings, I do past life regressions, I do a combination. I have some books that I've written about past life stuff, and I have lots of background understanding and teachings. I have an online course on my YouTube channel that helps you remember your own past life. And, there's lots of ways that you can learn more about how to do that, feel comfortable with it, to explore and understand more of your whole soul's experience.
Well, tell me a little bit more about your YouTube channel too.
Oh, fun. So I I put that out there because my spirit guides, which are kind of like my CEOs on the other side, honestly, they really
The
are.
slave drivers.
I know. And they're like, you got to make videos. And months would go by. When are you going to make those videos? Are you going to do those videos yet? Do you know how uncomfortable it was for me when I first started doing all this stuff?
Yes, I do. I might actually know.
I think you would. And so I started making these videos. My first one was in 2011, and I did that as part of a contest. Man, was I nervous. I'm reading, you can tell it's terrible. But then when I started talking just off the cuff without looking at anything, I got comfortable. I got relaxed, and so I don't know, when I first started putting more stuff out there, I think 2021 or 22, something like that, I started doing more. And it really, I just felt a calling to help people learn more about all the different aspects of how it feels, what it looks like, what you can uncover, why would you ever bother, all those kind of questions people were asking me whenever I was giving a reading or a past life regression. I'm like, that'd make a great video. Maybe I'll explain that more. And I have some meditations out there. And like I mentioned, I put together a course, Lori. I mean, it's about really helping you discover more about your own past lives, helping you really uncover a lot more than that, really. I take you into basics about it, trusting your intuition, why that is so incredibly important to have any experience, whether you're meditating, having a past life regression, or whatever, what it feels like to set an intent. And I have other mini guided meditations to help you prepare, to understand what it even is, why it's so important to forgive and to do that forgiveness work before you even enter into a past life regression, self-hypnosis, guided meditation, or work with someone like me one-on-one, or listen to another meditation, or however you choose to get there. I mean, you really have to work through any traumas that come up so you can release those, just like how we discussed throughout this interview today.
Yeah, exactly.
So important to do. So I have all that kind of stuff on my YouTube channel. And I always say, if you have any questions, leave in the comments and I'll make another video to answer those questions.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, I want to ask you, Karen, what do you think right now after all of these experiences, not only the NDEs, but also all these past life regressions for yourself, for other people? What do you feel like you know for sure?
We're not just this human experience.
Amen.
I mean, truly, we are a spiritual being once in a while having this human experience. And when you start to really wake up your higher dimensional chakras above your crown, You are expanding your energy, consciously bringing that knowledge into this earth experience, and it just makes things so much easier. Honestly, when you start to trust your intuition, then you know you're making the right choice or the wrong choice. Whether it's with a relationship, the book you need to read next, the work that you need to work on next at your job. And when you're in the grocery store and you're like, man, I forgot my list. What do I need? And you can just be like, okay, what do I need? And feel guided and trust that to go and find those things. It's so important to understand and learn all that kind of thing.
I agree. Well, Karen, this conversation did not disappoint.
So
We
happy.
covered a lot of ground today,
We
and
did.
I want to thank you. I understand as a fellow content creator what dedication it takes to create these videos, to edit them, to publish them. There's so much work that goes on behind the scenes.
Sure.
And you've written books and you do all of these different things. So thank you, Karen, for what you are doing to help wake up the collective. It is so needed right now.
I appreciate, Lori. If you weren't here, I can't get the message out as easily. And I so appreciate you. You've had a book yourself. You've done work of all kinds and helping to bring that knowledge out there to the collective.
Thank you.
We're
Well,
all
it
in.
takes a village, right?
It does. I was just going to say, we're all in this together.
Yeah,
You
all
guys
in
are
this
telling me
together.
to say this, which we started with talking about that,
You did. And of course, this show is absolutely nothing without all of you who tune in to watch, to listen, and to share these beautiful conversations with somebody who needs it. And if you still have questions, you can join me for Wake Up Wednesdays live at 5 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Mountain, 7 p.m. Central, and 8 p.m. Eastern. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Do you believe that love never dies and you want to hear stories that prove it? Well, hit the subscribe button. You belong here.